Welcome to Fear No Evil, where the evil that I speak about is child sexual abuse, where Psalms 23 is the foundational scripture, and where the Lord is my shepherd at all times. I'm sorry that I haven't made a video in probably a couple weeks now. My father did pass away in January, and as a healed child sexual abuse survivor, you have to know when to not talk about it, and you have to be able to listen to your own body and your own emotions and your own mind. And when you feel like you've had enough talking about it, it is necessary for that survivor to step back. So that's what I do. It's very easy for people who are not sexually abused to talk about sexual abuse because they don't have any experiences to go with what they're saying. They don't have to deal with any emotions. For earlier people in their journey, they're not dealing with any memories. It is very tiring and it's very taxing for a lot of sexual abuse survivors to talk about the abuse. And at the same time, we have this Me Too movement going around the country that is supposed to be addressing childhood sexual abuse. And it does on the surface, but when it really gets down to it, it's not really addressing it. So I am thankful that there have been young women who have come out and talked about their abuse. But again, it would have been a lot better if you had said something at the time of the abuse. And that is wrong with our society. We don't know how to help children say something at the time the abuse is occurring. But we can't expect these children to say anything when half of society also at the same time silences the children. You can't have both things. You just can't. You can't try to silence half of the survivors because you don't like what they're saying, but then tell survivors that they need to come out and start talking about it. It doesn't work that way. And that's why I have a problem with people who are not necessarily survivors talking about abuse or giving advice. They can give us what the textbook says, but as far as their advice is concerned, that is what has messed up a lot of people. So I did do Simon LeVay's study, and I want to say that I agree, Simon LeVay. I agree with your conclusions. The first thing you found was that there's a difference in the brain structures of homosexual men when you compare their brain structures to the brain structures of heterosexual men. Again, he had to do this when the people were deceased, and so there was a lot of conflict in that study because the men were deceased, but I do believe him that he did find a difference in the brain between homosexual men and heterosexual men. And I agree with him that he did not prove that homosexuality is genetic. I'm going to go against the mainstream media. I'm going to go against the mainstream psychologists. I'm going to go against the mainstream counselors that we have out there now because they take Simon LeVay's study against his wishes. And they use the study as a foundation. You got to have a foundation. What are you building on? What are you building on? When you're building on studies that don't find a conclusive evidence to a biological determination of homosexuality, what are you building on? And see this tree? These are the studies that they have created. These are the studies that they have put out there. And one by one, I hope to chop down this tree. And all those little beautiful fruit on the tree, those are survivors. Those are the survivors that they have put on their tree, that they say that they are helping. But at the same time, they're also hurting other survivors. So I'm going to chop down their studies. I'm going to chop down their tree. And I'm going to show that there's not one study that says that homosexuality is biological and that it determines someone's sexual orientation while they're in the womb. Because Simon LeVay did not prove that homosexuality is genetic. He said it himself, and I agree with him. Now, there's another study after that. I was hoping to get to Alfred Kinsey. Alfred Kinsey is the big one. Wait till we get to that study. Most people haven't even looked up Alfred Kinsey. Most people don't even know who Alfred Kinsey is. I didn't know. When homosexuality first came out and they said they were born that way, I believed them. I believed them. I believed that they were born that way. And I guess I'm having a problem because I don't like lies. I don't like it when people lie. Now, some people who said that they were born that way know they're lying. But when they indoctrinate other people to believe that, they're not necessarily lying because they don't know what else to believe because there's nothing else out there to give them a different direction. So another study was published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science of the United States of America and examined the anterior commissure, a structure that divides the left and right halves of our brain, known more commonly as the left and right hemisphere. And what they found was that the anterior commissure, I hope I'm saying it right, was larger in women and in 27 of the 30 homosexual men than the heterosexual male. Okay, so what they're trying to say is that the homosexual men had brains that were very similar to women. Their left and right halves of their brain were similar to women. But there were 3 homosexual men where that did not happen. Their brains were not as small as a woman's. They were not the same shape as a woman. However, they didn't go on to say why. They just discounted these 3. But there are other people who have gone into these studies and they have refuted these studies for the fact that you're not getting the same consistent showing with these studies. Now, I can agree too that probably the homosexual male brain is probably the same shape as a woman's brain. Does that mean they're women? No, they don't have the chromosomes. Does that mean that they are homosexual and that because of that they are attracted to males? Not necessarily. Now, in 1991, there was a study of twins by Michael Baling and Richard Pillard, which was also promoted as establishing biological determination of homosexuality. But other people came and criticized that study and analyzed that study, and they found that their conclusions were lacking in warrant and contrary to other studies. When you have studies that are contrary to other studies, you must, as a professional, bring in those studies. So the fact that the psychological community and the scientific community refuses to bring in the other studies that are contrary to these studies, and they're using Simon LeVay. The twin studies, they are studies that they use to lay a foundation for a biological determination of homosexuality. Well, one whack of this tree just said Simon LeVay didn't agree with that. And in my next video, I'm going to do another whack at this tree with the twin studies. We're going to go through the twin studies, and we're going to find out exactly what they found. And let's see if I can agree with what those studies found. Until then, survivors, be strong, be blessed. There's a lot going on in society, and people don't really care about child sexual abuse survivors because a lot of stuff going on in society is triggering child sexual abuse survivors. And they will respond if they're triggered enough, whether they be the LGBT, whether they not be the LGBT. All survivors can get triggered. And if you trigger them enough and they don't have any healing, they don't have any tools, it's almost like dynamite. So, sexual abuse survivors, take care of yourselves in this world. Learn to take care of yourself. Learn to nurture yourself because nobody's going to do it for you. And when they do it for you, they go overboard and make you even more disabled. They bring more damage to you by coddling you, by giving into your every whim. We are survivors. We are strong. We got through the abuse. We are still living. That says that we are strong. That says we have developed the skills to go on. And those who are far in their healing need to reach back to the other survivors and encourage them and help them to keep going just by our words. Keep going. Don't give up.